Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over an Arc 3.0 build for the Titan that is completely focused around continuously spamming out all of your abilities. And just a disclaimer, since the start of Season 18, there has been a bug for any Titans and Warlocks that are using the Arc subclass to where your resilience is basically nothing. So you're going to be taking a lot more damage than you would normally be taking, and you would be taking a lot more damage than if you just switched to a different subclass, and I don't think that has been fixed yet. So keep that in mind if you're using this build around the time I'm uploading this video, that it might be a bit harder to use this in more difficult content. So this Titan build is completely focused around just being able to spam out all of your abilities incredibly quickly and just continuously be amplified, zooming around the map, throwing grenades everywhere, spamming out your melee, and getting your super back fairly quickly. And once the resilience bug is fixed, this will also be a pretty good build for more difficult content, just because of the sheer amount of damage a lot of your abilities are going to be able to do. So you can use either the supers you want. I personally use Thunder Crash just because it does a lot more burst damage and it has a lower base cooldown, so you're going to get it back a little bit more quickly, but both Thunder Crash and Fist of Havoc are both really strong. And we're going to be using the new class ability Thruster. It has a slightly lower cooldown than both of the barricades, and it actually does add a good amount of movement to the Titan and fits in really well for this playstyle. You can use whatever movement ability you want, that's just personal preference. And then for a melee, we're going to be using the new Thunderclap ability. Essentially, this is a charge up melee attack that the longer you charge it, the more damage it does. And when you unleash the attack, it does a big chunk of damage in what's essentially a cone in front of you. Now for red bar enemies, you can pretty much just tap your melee and it will charge it at the least amount of time, but that's still pretty much enough to kill almost every red bar enemy in the game. And you can charge it up more to kill higher health enemies. This does a ton of damage. Also, a fully charged Thunderclap does one shot in PvP, so there's also that if you're doing PvP. Now for your grenade, I have been using Storm Grenade recently. It feels pretty good, but generally you can either use Storm Grenade or Pulse Grenade. I think those are going to be the two strongest grenades. And the reason for that is our first aspect, which is Touch of Thunder, which buffs up all of your different grenades. For Pulse Grenades, it creates ionic traces periodically and increases the Pulse Grenade's damage over time. But for Storm Grenade, it creates a roaming thundercloud after it initially detonates that tracks down enemies and constantly shoots down lightning bolts on them. This does a lot of damage and it's tracking enemies, so it's just following them around. So even if an enemy is moving kind of quickly, it'll actually be able to track them and keep up with them doing damage. I'm not sure which one of these is going to be the best for, say, high level content, because the Pulse Grenade can be really good if it's doing its full duration on enemies that can create a lot more ionic traces, but both of these are going to be really good. Then our other aspect is Knockout. When you critically wound or break the shield of an enemy, which increases the range and damage of your melee ability, and defeating enemies with your melee ability amplifies you and starts your health regeneration, so it'll give you some more survivability. And then for the fragments, I'm using Spark of Shock, so your arc grenades jolt targets. Very good for clearing out a lot of enemies. Then we have Spark of Magnitude. The lingering effect of your grenades has extended duration. Again, this synergizes very well with your Storm Grenade or Pulse Grenade. Then we have a Spark of Resistance. When surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage, just makes you much more tanky. This is actually kind of required right now because of the resilience bug, but once that's fixed, this is just going to make you even more tanky. And then we have a Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an ionic trace, and this synergizes well with a lot of other pieces of this build, giving us a lot more ionic traces, which lets us use our abilities even more. And this is one of the fragments you're going to have to go buy. This was one of the fragments that unlocked once the raid was completed, so you may have to go buy this. And for stats, I'm going into the same thing I was going into for last season, which is getting 100 resilience and going into recovery and discipline. I don't think there's really a big reason to change from these. You could potentially try to go more into intellect, so you could have your super up more, but that's probably the only thing I would experiment with a little bit. Then for our exotic armor, we're using Heart to the Inmost Light. which empowers your other 2 abilities when you use any of your abilities. So if you use your class ability, it empowers your grenade and melee. If you use your melee, it empowers your class ability and your grenade. And empowering your abilities make them come back much more quickly and causes your melee and grenades to do more damage. So this is one of the really important tools for just being able to spam out your abilities incredibly quickly. Once you have these empower buffs up, your abilities just come back so quickly and synergize well with everything else we're doing in our build to just continue to spam out your abilities. And for the mods on our helmet, we're using hands-on twice, which you gain bonus super energy on energy kills. We're using elemental charge, so picking up an elemental well makes you become charged with light, gives you 2 stacks if it's a well that matches your subclass. On the gloves, I'm using Font of Might, and I'm just using 2 anti-champion mods. I pretty much just keep those on. There's not really any other super good mods to replace these with, so I just keep those on. On our chest piece, I'm using high energy fire, thermoshock plating, and concussive dampener. You can use whatever different damage reduction mods you want to use. If you feel like you're getting slapped by enemies too much, you can use damage reduction at point blank range. If you feel like you're getting killed by snipers too much, you could use sniper damage resistance, pretty much anything you want to use for those mods. For our legs, we're using elemental ordnance, which creates elemental wells from your grenade kills. This is the primary way I'm generating elemental wells, but you do get quite a bit from this setup. Absolution, so anytime you pick up an orb of power, it reduces all of your ability cooldowns. This is pretty much just the best mod I have in this slot, and when you're with a group, this actually does work pretty well. I'm using machine gun scavenger just because I've been using machine guns a lot this season. You could switch that up for any other 1-point mod if you want to use something else. Then for our mark, I'm using lightning strikes twice, which you're going to need the last row of the season mods to get. And after throwing an arc grenade, you gain increased grenade recharge for a short time. Arc final blows extend the duration of this effect. This is just really strong, allowing you to throw out your grenades more and more. And for weapons, you're just going to want to use any arc weapons that are good, anything you like to use. The Thunderlord is actually really good this season. I've been using that because it also has anti-overload on it for overload champions. Very good weapon, really high damage. Is arc, so synergizes with everything we're doing in this build. Very good weapon. The new exotic of the season, the Delicatum, is very good. A good fusion rifle that also jolts targets after picking up ionic traces and can generate ionic traces itself. Very, very good weapon. I think even kind of underrated right now. The Cold Heart's also very good, which will periodically generate ionic traces while in its high damaging state. So that's another very good exotic. And then just pretty much any other arc weapon you can get with good rolls is going to be really good. So that's the entire build. One of my favorite builds to use in Destiny right now. Even with the resilience being bugged and being a lot more squishy, this build's still incredibly fun to use, especially with the new thruster ability, so we get to move around the battlefield a little bit more easily as Titans, just get to spam out every ability. We're getting our supers much more quickly, and just generally is a really smooth build to play. And I think once the resilience bug is fixed, it's going to be a pretty tanky build with a lot of damage output. But that's pretty much all I want to go over, so subscribe if you want to see more Destiny 2 or other FPS videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about this Arc 3.0 Titan build, and thanks for watching.
The score may be defeated.